Kathy and Emma back in the prize pit to give out prizes and keep track of your comments and questions. So do keep them coming in throughout this session. Hopefully you wandered or drove around the road network looking at it slightly differently after module 1 and started looking for visual deceit or areas that might cause trouble or the like. And we're going to sort of continue on with that, talking about road safety auditing, what it is, when you can do it. You should be having a think about your little research assignment and creating something entertaining or a fact sheet or informative or something like that on your topic. And remember, if you're struggling to find information about that using the old Google machine, shoot an email through to Kathy, myself, or Emma, and we'll point you at some information. And if you're struggling to think of ideas on how to present it, again, we could help you there, or fact sheets or podcasts or anything you want. Right, but do keep your questions coming in if they're about the logistics management of the course or the content. We're happy to go through them now. Odds on, if you're thinking of a question, somebody else is probably thinking of it as well, and you can always do it just to us or the whole audience. All right, so hopefully you're seeing my slides there. And I'll get started. And there's a couple of points along here where I'll be asking for your input. So, and remember to look out for Wally the Wombat. Count your Wallies, as you would have seen in your quiz. It's a question. Hopefully you managed to get to your quiz and get that done. And yeah, so what we're going to talk about this first bit of this module are the steps of a road safety audit, but we'll get back to that. We talked about the types of road safety audits right at the last bit of the last module, and I put this table up, and so I just thought I'd recap and start with this and remind you that there's these different stages that you can do audits, and they're different sort of types of audits, but they all follow the same 8 steps, which we'll get to today. But you can have that feasibility design audit, preliminary design audit, detailed design audit. So these are all where you're given some form of design. It can be very high level, or it could be a very detailed design set, and you're asked to think about the road environment when it's built. And that's what you're auditing. You're pointing out, these are the risks once you build that new thing. Not what are the risks now, but what are the risks when you've built it in the future. The roadworks construction ones are a little bit of both. You will often assess the traffic management plan, the traffic guidance scheme, and then you'll also probably look at it once it's actually in place. So you'll look at it and imagine it installed, as in the roadworks scheme, and you'll probably look at it once it's in to check everything's right, there's no other risks. You've got your pre-opening before the ribbon is cut, so the road's closed to traffic, or that area is closed to traffic, and you have a look at it. Post-opening is, very briefly after it's open to traffic, and you're getting in there fairly quickly after that. Existing roads, that's the one where you're looking at what's there, and thematic audits being pedestrian, cyclist, or motorcycle-specific audits. So this module, we're going to talk about the 8 steps in a road safety audit, which is the same for every one of those types of audits. So it's the same 8 steps you go through, just you're sort of given different information. And then pointing you at some further information on these steps. And then we're going to have a chat about pedestrians, and I'll get to that as a sort of separate little sub-module of this module. Okay. So road safety audits, it's a fairly straightforward process. And, once you're up and running, you know the process quite well. It has these 8 main steps, which we're going to go through shortly. It does take time. Like, audits are a a time-consuming thing. There's the steps you've got to go through, and then you've got to analyze quite a bit of stuff and visit the site. They do add value to a project, and they should be an integral part of the design process. Really, we want to have this to ensure we're not building anything unsafe, and to ensure maximising road safety benefit out of new projects, new designs. There's a roundabout there, a roundabout sign. I give a prize to the first person who can tell me what's slightly wrong with that sign. I'll come back to that, but have a look at it. First person who can tell me what's slightly wrong with that sign. I'm going to keep going. I'll come back to it. I see people looking very closely at their screen. Well, I can't see you. I imagine you're looking very closely at your screen, trying to ponder what's wrong with it. Okay, this snip is directly out of the Australians Guide to Road Safety Part 6A, which is how to do road safety audit guide. And it lays out these 8 steps there. Okay, so you got your 8 steps. It actually also lays out the responsibility. Who's responsible for this step within the audit process? So you can see there the client or designer, and then you've got the audit team coming in. So we're just going to run through each of these one at a time. We'll do it fairly quickly. We've got the selecting the audit team. You've got the information that is provided and passed over to the audit team. You've got some sort of commencement meeting. Then there's the assessing of the documents and the detailed reviews there. Then inspecting the site during the daytime and the nighttime. Writing up that audit report. Some sort of completion meeting, handing it over, talking to the client. And then responding to the audit report. And then the final one down there is implementing. And if there's no intention to ever implement anything, ever change anything or the like, I mean, really, is there any point doing this process? So there's got to be an openness and a willingness to take things on and adjust and try to improve road safety. So let's go through those. Select the audit team. So this is the responsibility of the client, the designer, the project manager, or the like. They tend to just sort of appoint a consultancy or an individual that they know, and then let them organise their team around them. But they could have input into the team selection if they want. Now, in Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Tassie, you've got to have one senior road safety auditor, and then you can have other road safety auditors. New South Wales has got this little, these sort of levels. They have a level 3, and that's someone they call a team leader. New Zealand's a bit sort of slightly different. They want somebody who's leading, and the person leading has to have good experience. So in Victoria, we'd call that a senior auditor. Others might call it a lead auditor. And then if you've got anybody else, we call them observers or potentially trainees. And Western Australia loves the term a trainee road safety auditor. I tend to call them observers because they've got a different system over there. So that could be anybody. It could be a police officer that you've got along. It could be the school principal. It could be somebody from your team who's a drainage expert or something like that. Because it could be anybody. Now they're put down in the audit report as part of the team, but not one of the road safety auditors, if that makes sense. So client's responsible for appointing the team, and it's really important, I suppose, that everybody understands what is the process of road safety auditing. Okay, a couple little tips here. I like to just do a little quick tips. We've got a team. I do talk about teams there. It's almost never that you do a one-person audit, and maybe occasionally for a very small project, a low-volume road or the like. But there's so much advantage to having a team looking at it. You can discuss it with people. You get a second set of eyes on things. You can bring people in with experience in areas that you don't have experience in. So it's a really good process. You need to make sure everybody is independent. That's really important. We can't have the designer or the project manager or somebody who's influenced by one means or another as part of that team. And the real reasons are, well, one, you can't proofread your own work, so you're going to miss things. I'm sure you've done that, written a letter, read it, and gone, yep, it's perfect. Handed it over to somebody else to review, and they find mistakes all over it. You look at it again, you go, how did I miss that? Well, that's one. The second one is that if it's your project, you have conscious and unconscious bias towards different aspects of it. I mean, you know all of the community concerns, the cost implications, the environmental, the cultural heritage things, and you can be quite swayed by that, as I say, consciously or unconsciously. So the independence is a wonderful thing. It's quite a luxurious thing to be a road safety auditor because you just say it as it is from a road safety perspective. Sometimes you're a little sympathetic to the project team in understanding their constraints, but really that's their problem. That's their thing to deal with. Only a senior road safety auditor should lead the audit team, and I'll explain what a senior road safety auditor is shortly. And as I said, final module talks to you about how you become an accredited registered road safety auditor, how you would progress and graduate to a senior auditor or a team lead auditor. So you'll get lots of info on that. Ideally, right, you'd have a audit team that has this broad road safety experience, a mixture of professions, ages, empathy with all road users. You'd have male and females, and it'd be this quite diverse group. The reality is sometimes it's hard to pull that team together, and you've got time constraints and a whole lot of other issues. So you may end up sort of doing the best you can. This is just an audit team we put together at one point there, and we're doing some motorcycle specific audits. We had the three of us there who are all about the same age, male, all with a engineering, road design, traffic engineering background, all worked for Vic Roads. So we were so blinkered with our view, I suppose, in one sense. So we asked Wendy to come along and be our other auditor, and female, a completely different set of eyes on it, not a technical engineer, road style person, scooter rider, so giving us that extra value. As I say, this is a very nice, great thing to do. It's often very hard logistically to make it happen. So you want to assess the documentation, and you're going to get potentially a lot of documentation. Some of them you don't get a huge amount. Sometimes you just get a plan, a sketch, and that's about all. But sometimes you get a big design set. And then you're going to inspect the site. You get out there, and actually you get out there no matter which stage of audit it is. The feasibility design, the roadworks, the post-opening, you're on site, every one of them. And you're on site during the daytime and the nighttime. Now, there is a little bit of a get out clause in the Austroads guide to say that you can get away with not doing the nighttime if it's been assessed and you're really confident there's no extra risk. But we highly encourage the nighttime inspection as well. And you're basically going to have to do what your client tells you anyway. So if they say nighttime, you have to do night. Why do we do nighttime? Well, there's a number of reasons. I mean, there's some obvious stuff like, there we go, we're looking, driving along here, yeah, North Croydon's up there, that's good. Oh, well, at night, our sign retroreflectivity has gone. So sign retroreflectivity, lighting, is your lighting working? Is the lighting creating visual deceit? Are headlights going to be, really blinding others? Does the land use change at night? Is it a nightclub district that, starts really actually kicking off at 11 p.m. or something like that? Do you sort of get a feel for that? Now, to be honest, like 9 times out of 10, I don't pick anything up, or the team I'm in doesn't pick anything new up in the nighttime. But that 1 out of 10 is really quite important. And you really go, wow, okay, I'm really glad we came here at night because we've seen something slightly different, or we wouldn't just really didn't conceive that the lights down there made that real, look that the road continues another way, or these signs, there's too much going on. Did anybody come in with any answers on this sign, Kathy?
They sure did, and it was all about there's a break in it.
Is there?
And there is a break in it, and maybe the break's on the wrong side.
Wow. Okay. So first question, I suppose, is, are there breaks in roundabout signs in Australia and New Zealand? I don't know. How many roundabout signs do you think you've driven past in your life? Thousands? Tens of thousands? We're asking a pretty simple question here. Is there a break or not? Well, the answer is yes, there is. Sorry, Kathy, you were going to say?
Yeah, no, people are saying yes, there is.
There is. Well done. Well done. I reckon some of you are just trying to remember. And there is. And it's a little break to sort of subtly remind us which way to drive around a roundabout. And you don't want to actually put it there because that subtly reminds people to drive the wrong way around a roundabout. So we want to see it over on the other side, just to keep indicating which way we drive around a roundabout. Now, the question I ask you is, okay, so I'm putting that out there. I actually feel this is a nice bit of it, traffic engineering trivia, isn't it? Like, this is one you can tell your friends about at the barbecue. Did you know? Now, is it a road safety issue? This is what I ponder. As a road safety auditor, are you going to put this in your report? And also, how high are you going to risk rate this? So I'll ask another question. Is in what scenario, in what situation would you risk rate this a little bit higher in your road safety audit lens on? Does somebody want to write that in? Ideas on when you might say, well, actually a little bit higher risk. I'm going to give a prize to Sam there. So tourist areas, tourist spots, absolutely. And Nick's come through with a bit more and say, well, very much so. What about, hang on, did Nick say it might be a problem for areas where they drive on the right-hand side of the road? Absolutely. So here's an interesting one. You come out of Hobart International Airport with your hire car, and this is the first sign you hit. And this is the first roundabout you potentially have seen in your life because you come from Texas or somewhere, who knows? And yeah, so we've got now this spot where we've got a driver unfamiliar with roundabouts, who drives on the wrong side of the road and encountering a sign to help them guide around this roundabout, and obviously, potentially have some trouble. Now, still, I wouldn't rate this as, intolerable risk or the like. But luckily, when you find these sorts of things in an audit, they get fixed pretty quickly. That one has been fixed. In fact, I do have a photo. I've got to bring that in of it fixed. It was a little bit of work with some retro-reflective stickers to fix that one. So the real point I'm trying to make there is you've got to think about the issue in its contextual environment. What's the context of the issue? And that will help you risk rate it. So you're then going to write your audit report, and you're going to write a description of the project and the stage of audit, a list of all the information that was provided to you. That's a really important one, right? And not just a list of what was provided to you, but what was the date and the plan number and the version of that plan. And the reason for this is when you are sitting in court and there's been an incident and they are asking you about why you didn't pick something up in the audit. Well, you want to make sure you know which plan they built and which plan you audited, because they're not always the same. And that certainly happened a number of times where your auditors have audited something, made recommendations, changes have been made, other things have happened in the project, something somewhat different has been built. It has some safety issues, and there's been an incident, and then there's been people brought in and questioned, and luckily in all the ones that I'm aware of or have been involved in, the audit was very clear on the design number, the plan, and the auditors and myself, we all had copies of the plan, so there was no sort of confusion there. You list the team members, the dates that the audit was carried out, when the inspections happened. Some people like to even, jot down the weather conditions when the audit happened. And then you list your safety issues that you identify. And as I said, we've given you a template report to use, which covers all this quite nicely. So just follow that. The table of there's an example of the table of contents, and you have some photos. You can use photos in the appendix, or you can integrate them into the table if you want. It's up to you. Some sort of completion meeting or emailing and maybe a phone call to say everything makes sense. And then the client will respond to the audit report. There is actually no requirement to give that to the auditor. So if you are a designer or the like, or a road authority project manager, and you commission a road safety audit, you get the report in, you've got to respond to the findings, but that's for your record. You don't actually have to give that back to the auditor. It's a nice thing to do, but you don't have to. But anything you commit to, you've got to do. The audit report's given, to the project manager. File copies kept by everybody. All recommendations should have a written response. It is a bit of a shame when you see an audit handed over and then it's just put in a drawer and nobody ever knows what happened to it. So that responding is good. If you're a project manager or a designer or the like, and you receive this audit report, there's a couple of things to remember. Your response could become public, and they certainly have become public. So just be a little bit careful with your wording and how you respond to things. And it's good practice to give it back to the audit team as well for their sort of records and information, but it's not an absolute requirement. If you're the project manager, remember, the audit has been done for your purposes to reduce risk in your project, but it is your project and you decide what's going to happen and what's not going to happen. This is advice. A road safety audit is just a piece of advice within your project. You've got to take it fairly seriously though, because again, if something was to happen down the track, the questions would be asked, well, why didn't you take on those recommendations from the road safety audit report? Now, you may have very good justification for that, or you may have managed risk in another way, but you just want to clearly document that. Okay. Any questions come up there, Kathy?
All good at the moment. Do keep your questions coming in along the way.
Did everybody know the slot in the roundabout sign? Random trivia?
Not sure. I think Nick's saying he'll check on that airport sign though tonight. He's going to head there.
Good. I do have a photo of it rectified because poor taxi driver. Actually, I didn't get a hire car as a taxi, and I was coming out of Hobart Airport. I'm like, turn around, mate. We're going to go back and get a photo of that. Went around, took the photo, put it in running the audit course down there in Hobart a few years back, and showed it, and then I think it was rectified by the time I got back out to the airport. So I did pretty well. Anyway, what are we going to talk about now? Pedestrians. So I've given you this sort of general overview of road safety auditing, the real introduction to road safety auditing. Now, part of the syllabus requirements of an Austroads road safety audit course or the Austroads road safety audit syllabus is to touch on every road user. So everybody's got a little bit of an insight into the needs, the safety concerns of each road user. Because when you're out there auditing, you've got to think about everybody. You've got to think about all their needs. So this is where now we're going to touch on pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, heavy vehicles. So Jamie Robinson's going to talk to you a bit about heavy vehicles and some of the unique swept paths, design requirements, and different braking and sight distance and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so we're going to cover all of that off and then a few other things. But I'm going to start with the biggest road user group we have, pedestrians. Some of you might not think of them as a specific road user group. Hopefully you do. I'm sure you all do by now, but certainly some countries around the world don't have much of a vision of pedestrians as a legitimate road user, really. But huge amount of pedestrian activity and trauma, unfortunately. So we want to identify the requirements of pedestrians for safe travel, source some technical information regarding infrastructure and pedestrian safety, and then some common audit findings that the pedestrians are involved in, and understanding basic pedestrian terminology. So when you write those reports, you can sound like you know what you're talking about. All right, there are 4 groups of pedestrians that are at the greatest risk. How about you type a few in? How many prizes have we got, Kathy?
We got plenty, Ken.
Oh, good. All right. Okay, Nick's got elderly. Tim's got children. Prize. John's got intoxicated. Prize. And Chris has got DDA, which I'll give in terms of, vision impaired, mobility impaired, which Nick said afterwards, but he already got a prize. So there you go. Nick, Tim, John, Chris, prizes. Elderly, young, disabled, intoxicated. So elderly and young, interestingly, very similar characteristics from a human factors perspective in a weird way. Sort of some challenges in the cognitive processing ability, reaction time, sometimes making bad decisions. Kids, young sort of dart out a bit more than the elderly though. Disabled in a raw numbers perspective are a very low proportion of our trauma. However, at an individual level are quite at high risk, and especially the infrastructure can be a very important part of that, with forcing those in wheelchairs or vision impaired to be really exposed to some high risk scenarios. So there's a case by case really important ones. And far and away our biggest trauma group within pedestrian activity are the intoxicated pedestrians. Just staggering amounts of intoxicated pedestrian trauma across Australia and New Zealand, which kind of makes sense. But yeah, and then it becomes an interesting one as to how you address that with road infrastructure. The common response would be, well, they shouldn't get drunk and wander out on the road. And well, this goes back to our little bit of safe system thinking. They are going to get drunk and they are going to wander out onto the road. So it's up to you to engineer the road to mean it doesn't result in death or serious injury. Now, you might go, come on, a bit of personal responsibility here. Well, yeah, I mean, we're not actively encouraging that, but the amount of it happening is is rife, and so we've got to start doing things about it. 3 basic strategies for pedestrian safety. I'm really simplifying this down to segregation. So you're completely saying that road user group there, and this road user group here. Separation in time or in space, and I'll talk about that shortly. And integration, where you're mixing the pedestrians and the vehicles. So let's just look at those. Segregation, I mean, our real classic examples are freeways, okay? They are trying to actively make it no pedestrian activity whatsoever. If you do trauma analysis of freeways, you actually find there's quite a bit of pedestrian trauma, and that's due to broken down vehicles, intoxicated pedestrians getting out of taxis, and all sorts of stuff. If you watch the CCTV footage, you know, throwing up and urinating and all sorts of stuff, and then being struck. So it's quite an interesting environment to try to alter from a road safety perspective. But nonetheless, it is trying to segregate, say, no, this is vehicles, not pedestrians. Like a mall or a mall, depending on where you come from, where we're really saying this is not for vehicles. This is just for pedestrians. Anybody tell me where that one is? I'm on a prize-giving spree here, Kathy. The Victorians are at an advantage on this one. Ballarat, John. John is on a big prize day. Correct, John. The Federation Star gives it away. Okay, let's talk about separation now. Okay, separation in time. So it's the same bit of road here. At one point in time, it's meant to be used by pedestrians, and at another point in time, it's used by cars or trams. So that's separation in time, as are children's crossings, or these ones where people can cross diagonally or cross the normal way. So some people call that a scramble crossing. There's an actual official name for it in traffic engineering. I'm really going to run a traffic engineering trivia night. Anybody tell me the name for that type of scramble crossing, the official name for it? Like, it'll be a big prize if somebody does tell us that. Well, people are madly Googling another name for a scramble crossing. But these are all just separation in time, same bit of road. Well, nobody's got that one. It's called a barn stance. I assume an engineer or a traffic engineer, Mr. or Mrs. Barnes, has come up with the name or the crossing and been named that. Separation in space is really your refuge areas, your footpaths, those sorts of things, which have that area separated. Now, there's a little rule of thumb I like to use as an auditor, because remember, auditing is not all about conforming with standards and checking conformance with standards. If you're providing a refuge area for pedestrians, like this pedestrian refuge in the middle of the road here, you want to provide enough space so a mother or a father with their pram pushing their baby doesn't have to decide whether they or their baby has to be in live traffic. That's a pretty good rule of thumb, okay, when they're propped in there. Some people like to use the bike. So if you're on a bike and you prop in the middle, you shouldn't have to have either top. But that's giving you an idea. But when you get out on site and you look at one of these proposed areas, if you're noticing there's a heap of pedestrians and that there's going to be many of them stored there, you may decide it should be wider, even though it meets absolute minimum standards or the like. We also have to think about the people on the gophers or the in wheelchairs or other things. Random thing, 20 years ago, I did a road safety project or was asked to go to Mildura to do a road safety project, which was to look at why they were getting so many late night crashes involving the mobility scooters. Interesting one. I did discover that there was a bit of a culture of young people taking their grandparents' mobility scooters out at night down to the pub and then doing different activities with them. So random things that happen. Eh? There's often a bit of a misconception that a pedestrian overpass is the answer, right? Pedestrian overpasses are rarely the answer to pedestrian safety, and the reason for that is we have to really understand how people are going to use these facilities. The idea of walking up this big long ramp, 2 ramps and over, and then 2 ramps back down, that's a lot to do. Gee, it's going to be a lot easier just to walk straight across there, isn't it? And the reality is that a lot of people do. They can be a really good facility in some circumstances, well designed, good paths, but just be aware that because that's there does not necessarily make this safe for pedestrians. So have a think about that as you go. Now, is this a standard sign? Does this conform with the road rules of Australia? I don't know if it actually conforms in New Zealand. I think it does. Yeah. A shared zone. Well, that is a legal sign in Australia, and it has a very specific regulatory requirement in the road rules. So if you pass one of these signs, what do the road rules say? Somebody pop that into the chat for a prize. What do you have to do in a shared zone if you're a driver or if you're a pedestrian driver? I'll give that a second. I'll have a wonder. Right. So we had Nick and Lillian both get in there pretty much at the same time. Driver must give way to pedestrians. That's right. It's pedestrian priority all the way through. Kathy, you can work out who gets prizes there. Pedestrian priority through this shared zone. One thing I actually keep hearing a lot of these days is people calling a shared path a shared zone. That's just wrong terminology. Shared path is where pedestrians and cyclists go. A shared zone is exactly as we're hearing here, that it's an area where drivers have to give way to pedestrians. Now, those who didn't know that, you're going to have to hand your license back in because it's part of the road rules, and you should know that. But there's another little thing that when you're looking at a shared zone or you're planning to build a shared zone, there's a little bit of advice that comes in the guidelines. In the Australians Guide to Traffic Management and the Australians Guide to Road Safety, they talk a little bit about how you create a shared zone. Does anybody have any idea of what that sort of general guidance might be trying to encourage you to do when you're designing it? Any ideas, design guidance? John's got a good one that's come in. Right, John's put in there, differentiate from a standard road. And that's pretty much it. I mean, simpler level, I simplify things often. Make it not look like a road. So if you're going to create a shared zone, it cannot look like a road because the public absolutely feel it's a road, cars have priority. Now, that's what it is. So here's a shared zone, and there's some good aspects to it, and there's some areas that I think could be improved. This is down in Sale in regional Victoria. So you see the shared zone sign up there? Yep, nice, conforms with the road rules. They put a give way to pedestrians because, don't worry, you weren't the only one who didn't know the road rules. Yeah, not too many people actually understand that. Give way to pedestrians, they put a supplementary sign. Now, what I like here is that they've removed curbs. They've used a different coloured surface to the usual black asphalt on the approach to this. What I'm not so happy about is they line marked it like a road. Yeah, what you want to be doing is creating this environment where the drivers are going, should I even be here? That's a win. Like, that is a great shared zone. Texture the surface, mix up the car parking, and those are really great shared zones. Anyway. So as an auditor, you want to check, how well is this actually going to be complied with, and are we going to get confusion? And this leads me really nicely into auditing for pedestrians. Some issues. All right, let's do some pictures, some case studies of pedestrian issues. Okay, first one. I have some issues with slip lanes. Slip lanes and pedestrians don't mix too well. And this sort of scenario probably is one of the worst, where you've got a driver approaching, in a slip lane, approaching a pedestrian crossing. Now, where is the driver looking? Well, the driver is looking out this way to see if they can put the foot down, aren't they? The pedestrian is hidden behind some foliage, just to really make the risk even higher. The pedestrian has priority. So they may just sort of walk out there not looking because they've got priority. And all of a sudden we've got a driver looking away from the pedestrian and a pedestrian wandering out there with priority. And we've got quite a nasty mix. The swept path of a vehicle, this is not a particularly bad example, but it's trying to just show you that a large vehicle will sweep and the tail of the vehicle will drag in a certain manner. Jamie, next module, is going to show you lots of swept path diagrams and how vehicles track and those sorts of things. But you've got to think about where pedestrians will be storing while they're waiting, and will vehicles be encroaching on those areas. You've got to audit what's not there as well as what's there, if that makes sense. So a route like this has no pedestrian facilities, and that is the issue, isn't it? So this is actually an area that's going to become a major truck bypass route with no pedestrian facilities and none that were suggested. And there is some pedestrian activity. And you might say, oh, well, they've got an ability to walk on the grass. Well, we've got to think about all of the pedestrians, so those in wheelchairs or those in mobility devices, but also think about it when it's muddy or people pushing a pram. So we're starting to see that this is going to be meaning they're in the shoulder, we've got heavy vehicles, we've got increased traffic, and it's not a great mix. So as an auditor, you can rightly recommend, the addition of a separated facility for pedestrians. And here's another example of where pedestrians have to walk in the grass. And this one's got a crest and lots of little issues. Oh, roundabout sign. Yep, gaps in the right spot. Very good. Well done, Eastern region. Okay. So pedestrian, a bit of terminology that you should be using is pedestrian desire line. Pedestrian desire line. So let's have a look here. We've got a pedestrian crossing, a lovely facility that's been created there. And crossing. And we've got these pedestrians decided to make their line across there. Yeah, the traffic engineers have tried to, put some pedestrian fencing up there to stop this, to make everybody go to here and then back. Oh, but this girl's decided different. This continues on for a little bit of time. Pedestrians do not like going off their desire line, right? They hate it, in fact. And they will walk on the road on the wrong side of a pedestrian fence if it's a easier desire line. And so I really am not a fan of pedestrian fencing in many situations from a road safety perspective. We've seen it implemented so many times where it actually significantly increases risk because of this. Yeah, in theory, if everybody followed the exact rules, it would be a good thing. But you need to be very careful and very targeted about where you use your pedestrian fencing so as not to corral people into traffic lanes. Now, for me, there's two places I really advocate for pedestrian fencing. There's a few I can see their benefit, and then there's just an absolute heap of them. I just go, that's going to make things worse. So the places I absolutely advocate for them are outside a pub or a bar, outside the doors of that. The reason for that is I've done now 2 coronial cases where I've had to investigate pedestrians being killed outside pubs, and they have been fighting or sort of fallen out of the pub straight onto the road in groups and been struck and killed. And in this case, the pedestrian fencing would almost be it is a containment fence is the way I see it. So, okay, they're going to fall out, or they're going to come out of there, and they're going to be contained by the fence rather than going onto the high-speed road. That's one area. The second one is around schools, and it's the same theory. I haven't had to investigate any of these, but the kids, messing around or chasing a ball or whatever it is, same idea, outside the school gate, like that. The ones I'm okay, can work okay are around some public transport stops, and just the way that all works, getting on and off and making sure that it all happens that you want. But there's large swathes of pedestrian fencing, like this diagram. They'll just walk where they want. And I got this one off LinkedIn the other day. I thought it's a good explanation of desire line, isn't it? The user experience, that's what they want to do. That's what somebody designed and tried to tell them to do. And then remind me of some Geelong City Council, I was talking to Geelong City Council said at one point, sometimes we do our parks or new areas like that, and we don't pave them, we just wait and we see where the goat tracks start, and then we pave those as the park. I'm like, that's just beautiful, user-centric design, isn't it? Here's one from Kathy, who noticed a desire line because she's rapidly becoming a road safety engineer. Can't look at the road environment without seeing things like pedestrian desire lines. So exactly, that's the desire line.
Can I give a prize? I can't believe you put my photo in there. I'm going to give a prize to who knows where that is. That's really hard to pick. It's hard to pick. Yeah, I knew you'd get it, John, because it's from Geelong. Oh, hospital specific too. Nice work. Anyway, that's what I do on a weekend with my family. Don't they love it?
Well, I do love a raised pedestrian crossing, a wombat crossing. We'll come back to talking about that. So that's a good one. That might go into our pedestrian design course. Oh, yeah, I've just got lots of pictures of desire lines which have not been catered for. I was taking a group of engineers to talk about cyclists and roundabouts. But anyway, forget about that. That's why they're out there. But yeah, really heavy desire lines across here. It's not the best photo, but no facilities, no ability for that. And then we don't see so much of this in Australia and New Zealand, but certainly in other countries. I mean, if you have a motorway or a big freeway that you're building through an area, and there's residential on one side and commercial on the other, or you split residential, they are going to cross the freeway, right? They will, and they'll do it just like these guys are doing. So road safety auditing is a worldwide thing, and so you need to be thinking about this. There is just the certain dominance of the motor vehicle, and I personally think it's a sort of societal hierarchy thing where those designing and managing the road and transport network drive cars, and they sort of have this unconscious feeling that anybody who doesn't drive a car is maybe not worthy of the infrastructure and the like. So, you know, we can step in there and we can really advocate for pedestrian safety, proper facilities, thinking about the planning stage, where things are going, and are you cutting off communities and the like. But it's just amazing, like these, multi-billion-dollar World Bank funded jobs in developing countries, just straight through separating these areas, and then just absolute pedestrian carnage through there when it opens, because you get super high speeds and pedestrians crossing and trading, and it's just, anyway, I don't need to. Okay, keep your questions and comments coming in. All right, here's an example, and I'm going to do a little case study here for you. This is a road in outer metropolitan Melbourne, it's inner outer. This is what you see as a driver, right? So you're looking down this road. The next photo I'm going to show you is taken from right here, just behind this little hazard board. Okay, so let's have a look at that. That's what the pedestrian says. Now, who has right of way? Well, the answer, did somebody answer that? Oh, good. We got both answers. We got both pedestrian and car. Who knows? Wow. The answer is car. Car has right of way. There's no regulatory pedestrian crossing there, so there's no leg signs, there's no markings. This is clearly car priority. And as you're driving along that, why would you be changing your anything? But the pedestrian there, they see things slightly different. They've got a different surface. They've got an outstand, a curve outstand. That's what we would call this bit that sort of sits out, There's a lot drawing them into thinking that they have priority. And in fact, these two guys, didn't take me long. I was out there for about 30 seconds before I saw these two guys chatting away. Just wander straight out there, car coming along here, and this car nicely braked and let them go. Unfortunately, the reason I was out there is that one didn't. And one car driving along here, thought they had right of way priority, as they actually did, but the pedestrian stepped out thinking they had priority as well. And this is a big, real takeaway. If you take away one thing as an auditor for pedestrians, in my sort of opinion, is confusion of priority. Let's make it really clear, okay? If this is vehicle priority, which it is, and they're happy for that to happen, let's make it clear. Let's continue the road surface through here, right? So it's clear, this is road, this is road. You might even line mark it so it looks like road. And if it's going to be pedestrian priority, you actually make it pedestrian priority problem. Here's another one, which is a slight, not as bad in my opinion, but this is a confusion of priority attempt. I mean, it's kind of intentional, but not. But basically, there are these weird road rules that say, if you are a driver and you're doing a left turn in here, or you're doing a right turn in, you have to give way to pedestrians. If you're a driver coming out, you have priority. So technically there's priority for pedestrians from there to there, but not there. Now, this council actually wanted to put a regulatory pedestrian crossing in there, but the state road authority wouldn't let them due to concerns that it might cause traffic delays, which doesn't actually pass the pub test because any vehicle turning in actually has to give way. But anyway, that's what they were a little bit worried about. So they didn't do it. So the council just paints it yellow to try and say, pedestrians. But anyway, I just think we could be a little clearer with that. Another one here, which was an interesting one, where the road project provides these threshold treatments, we'll call them. And they're really, really good thing to do is to try to raise your threshold. So vehicles that are turning in don't, do it super fast. At any pedestrian crossing, vehicles are going to slow down. And this one was created, but there was concern, is a pedestrian going to think it's a zebra crossing or a wombat crossing, a raised pedestrian crossing? And so they said, we'll paint it yellow to avoid the confusion of the white lines. They were white piano key markings. And so that's what they did. Now, I think, again, like as a road safety auditor, you've got to try to put yourselves in the shoes of somebody who doesn't have that sort of level of specific understanding or knowledge about white lines mean one thing, yellow lines mean another. So I think a bit of reality. I still think that there's potential that a lot of pedestrians will think that that is their priority. So a nicer way to do it, I think, is this one where it's sort of further set back. So they've still got the raised treatment. It looks more like a road, doesn't it? You approach it, looks road-like. Maybe they could have moved this back just a little bit more to really highlight it. But I don't think there's as much confusion in this one. I think this is a better sort of setup for a threshold treatment. And here's one, again, from an airport. I think I could do a whole road safety audit training course on photos from airports. They are just an absolute wealth of things that are not good for vehicles and pedestrians. And I think it's something to do with the fact that states don't have any say in what happens because it's federal land or something. But anyway, who's got priority through this? Because that's a road. That's the pedestrians. Well, it's very unclear, isn't it? The actual answer is, again, vehicles have priority, but gee, you wander out of the airport, you go to get in a car or the like, or you haven't seen your parents for a few years because of COVID activities, and they're waiting in the car, and you're running. I don't think you're going to notice that you've got to stop here and let the cars go past. I suppose on the upside, they've provided a raised point, which means that at least when the car hits you, it's going to be slow. Again, here, best intentions. Are we still here?
I think we lost you there for a minute, Ken, but you're back. Maybe not your video.
Okay, am I moving?
You're not moving. You're very animated though. But we can hear you.
How about now?
Okay, we're good now. Whew, there we go. That was exciting.
Well, this was going to be a big opportunity, Kathy, to take over.
I'm ready.
I know. You're excited. Okay, I got to get my slides back up and ready. So maybe I got too excited and animated. Might be a good time to pause and see if there's any questions. And also, Kathy, just remind me what how long I've got to go, because I really have no idea.
No, you're tracking very well, and it's probably a good time for a quick coffee/toilet break for everyone. So how about we do that now? Or you've got an activity coming up. Maybe you've gone.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Do I have an activity coming up? I do not for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, should we just do a quick break?
Yeah.
2-minute break?
Yeah, let's have a quick break. Fill up a water, get a coffee if you need. It's getting late in the oven for a coffee, but and we'll be back in 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, terrific.
Settled again. Now, before I jump back into it, have a think about other questions you might have about the road safety audit process or those sorts of things. We're delving into the sort of specific road users and needs and those sorts of things, but we will have a little bit of time at the end of this session if there are people who are interested in that. And we may even have a little bit of time at the end of the session for you to maybe ask questions about your research project or your topic or the like. So you will either be able to type those in or even put your hand up and talk to us, which would be fun. But I'll keep ticking along with pedestrians now, assuming my slides work. I'm not sure what happened with that last one there. Right, Kathy, you're seeing the lovely Launceston Airport there?
Yep, for sure. All good.
All right. I think I started talking about this one and then got cut off, but this is just another example there of where I think, it's the best of intentions by the designer and the traffic engineer and the like to slow vehicles, which is great, and to show pedestrians this is a safer place to cross. But it does sort of lend you to think, oh, will somebody be confused and walk out there thinking they've got priority? We don't want to sort of see that confusion of priority. So as I mentioned, I mean, there's regulatory requirements for pedestrian priority, and we should know them and we should use them. And you need to have the pedestrian crossing feet, at least in Australia this is, and you need to have the black and white contrasting line marking. So this area, you've got some pedestrian feet, that's good, but we're missing the actual crossing lines on the ground there. Sorry, lost my pen. No lines there. Lines on this one, tick, but not there. So let's try and get that all right. There's some diagrams of how it all should be. And we use a fluorescent green, yellow sign. And we've had a little chat about slip lanes and the challenges there. This is a big debate going on in our industry at the moment, is pedestrian safety at slip lanes and what facilities you should use and what are the risks and the like. In sort of reviewing all of this debate, the one thing that most people completely agree on is that if we raise this pedestrian crossing, it's going to be safe. If that's raised as a wombat crossing, we'd call it, a raised zebra crossing being a wombat crossing, a raised pedestrian crossing, it's going to be safe. And here we go, just some fun photos of inappropriate use of pedestrian signs. Prize for the person who can tell me where this one is from. But here is the use of, this is a pedestrian crossing ahead sign, right? It's being used somehow here as a way to say, pedestrians, you should walk this way. This is your walking spot. It's just inappropriate. Is it a big road safety issue? Probably not. Right? Would I put it in a road safety audit report? I probably would, but I'd probably just make it a to note. I wouldn't risk rate it because it's sort of just annoying, compromises the integrity of signage schemes and things like that. just around the corner from that one. This one had to make me chuckle, which is that the pedestrian crossing signs being used to guide pedestrians to where their crossing point is. So they've marked the pedestrian crossing facility, and then they put the pedestrian signs up and pointed them at the pedestrians. Just completely missing the point that has to point at drivers, so they are aware that they have to stop and give. That one probably has a little bit more risk. That'll probably get into my report as a audit finding with a genuine risk rating, because it sort of diminishes the clearness of the priority for pedestrians. Anybody guess where those were? I think the second one gives it away a lot easier.
Yeah, we had Lilling and Nick both guess Hobart Waterfront.
That's it. Now here's a pedestrian crossing facility, a pedestrian crossing, commonly known as a zebra crossing, and there's some line marking on the road there. Don't worry about the other line marking. It's an attempt to sort of slow vehicles down. Neither here nor there on it, but what I want you to have a look at is this pedestrian crossing facility. It's got the signs facing the right way, at least, so facing drivers, so that's a good start. But if you were asked to road safety audit this facility, when it was a design, okay, it's just lines on paper or in CAD, and they're building curb out stands, some vegetation, some bins, the signs are going up. What do you think you could recommend as a road safety auditor that would enhance the safety of this treatment? That's just a minor sort of tweak on what they're actually existing is proposing. Any little tweaks you might like to do?
Lots of replies coming in. We've got clear sight lines, trim the tree on the right.
Yeah.
Wombat.
Yeah.
I think we're looking for some more, though. You're looking for some more, Ken?
Well, it's sort of embedded in the first one there, the clear the sight lines, but it's a little bit more to it. But all of what was said there would be good. I like the idea of making it a wombat crossing. Why wouldn't we? Slow vehicles down, added benefit. Trimming the tree, yep, sure, because it's blocking one of those signs, so that's a bit of an issue. But the clearing the sight line is an interesting one. And there's one particular aspect of this that is this side is quite interesting. So we've got vehicles approaching here. And we've got pedestrians crossing here. And sometimes our pedestrians are little-ish. So, 8-year-old, 10-year-old crossing there. And so this blocks the sight line. And so Chris has said, clear the sight lines. At a design stage, it's actually quite easy to do this. I mean, that whole setup could be pulled and put over this side and just adjusted accordingly so that the sight lines are open. The sight line impediments are on the other side. And so one thing I, sort of do with any design or with any existing treatment, doesn't matter, is you've got to try to put yourselves in the shoes of each of the road users. So you imagine crossing from this side. You imagine crossing from this side. Sometimes you can actually do it. You cross from this side, you cross from that side. You ride through it if you want. And so when you do that, you say, oh, I'm crossing. Okay, my sight lines are blocked immediately. That means their sight lines are blocked. And you imagine yourself as a driver driving up. I can't see what's just behind there. And so that's, to me, an example. It would cost no more. I mean, I don't know exactly what the drainage setup and everything is like that, but assume it would cost no more to make that on the other side. And you're going to add value, you're going to add safety. And so when we build it, we can get even more enhancements. This is the site of a fatality, another one I did coroner's report for. And the fatality involved a pedestrian stepping from exactly where we are to here and being struck by a vehicle coming through here. So they were killed. So let's have a look at this environment a little bit more. We're in a service road, okay? So we've got the big main carriageway out here, and we've got that photo was taken from just about there, and the pedestrian stepped out there. Let's go back another step. This is a 70-kilometre-per-hour road with lots of vehicles. I don't know, like 50,000 vehicles a day at least. It's heaps, and they're fast. This is the entry to the slip lane, and we go back to here. It sort of slides in there, and you can see there the pedestrian. You can see the crossing here is signalised crossing, pedestrian. That's green. That's green. That thing's doing its tactile tick, 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 telling you to go. We won't know for sure. You're never quite 100% sure with a pedestrian, with a road crash investigation like this, unless you got CCTV footage. But I suspect that there was a chance that the pedestrian sort of just had all of that and took that one step thinking, oh, it's their time to go. Like they were walking up and they went out there. And it's really hard to show this from a photo, but when you're out there, it really draws you to want to step. It's all much sort of bigger and in your face when you're out there. And so again, like if you were able to get to that at design stage when they're putting in the signals or the like, and you could have connected that up with anything, with a raised pedestrian crossing there, connected the signals through perhaps, or even started to think about things like slowing vehicles as they enter into this lower speed pedestrian environment, we could have some really great wins. There's some sightline, issues as well, which we reported that the pedestrian stepped out from there, but you could see, if they're coming from this way, sightline issues, and there are other things as well that were pointed out. A really common misunderstanding amongst people engaging road safety auditors or being involved in it is to say that, people think that getting an audit done, it's going to cover all the DDA, Disabilities Discrimination Act requirements. Now, the DDA is sometimes termed different things in different jurisdictions, but it's the piece of legislation that says when you're building new infrastructure, it's got to make sure that everybody can use it. Anybody in wheelchairs, vision impaired, or the like. And so this is where we see things like the tactile ground surface indicators, the TGSIs like this, specific ramp grades, handrails, buildings have these requirements and the like. Now, a road safety audit is not that. We're not checking all of that, okay? That's a different assessment. We may or may not pick this up if we decide to. So you might say, oh, there's no tactile ground surface indicators because you are concerned that might cause an issue. Or, oh, they're slightly pointing the wrong way. They don't contrast the pavement well enough, or whatever you've decided as an auditor. But you might not, and that's legitimate if you don't see it as actually presenting a genuine risk to road users. You don't need to pick it up. It may not conform with the Act or whatever legislation there is in your jurisdiction, but you don't need to pick it up. But you need to be clear with your client, this is what's going on. Because if they expect you to pick everything up and then you don't, it's sort of it's exactly right. It's a common audit misunderstanding. So let's just be clear with everybody. Painting your crossing points at signalised intersection like this, I'm neither here nor there. I've got no research or evidence to show it improves things or it doesn't improve things. costs money. Could be a skid resistance issue for a cyclist or a motorcyclist if that gets wet, it's polished up, or a pedestrian for that matter. So a few things to consider. Yeah, that was just talking about contrasting TGSIs, whether that's really a road safety issue or not, if it doesn't contrast. Case study again. Now, this one I'm going to get you to do. You're going to put yourselves in the, you're going to be an auditor and you're going to predict crashes. Little exercise we're going to do. This is an intersection. And at one location, one specific spot on this intersection, there are 4 pedestrian serious injury crashes in exactly the same way, not all at the same time, but this is over a 5-year period. 4 crashes, exactly the same. Serious injury, pedestrians. Okay? And what we're going to get you to do is guess where it is. Now, I'm going to give you some multiple choice options. So, there we go. Option 1 is a vehicle. Those of you who do crash diagrams a lot, you'll know a dotted line is a pedestrian. That's the pedestrian's movement. Solid line is a car or truck. Option 1. Pedestrian crossing and being struck by vehicle turning. Option 2. Pedestrian crossing at this point and a vehicle turning on top of the pedestrian. Option 3. Pedestrian crossing from the refuge to the curb, being struck by vehicle slip lane. Slip lane, yeah. Same on this one. Option 4, crossing there, being struck. And option 5, turning in and striking a pedestrian coming through. Now, over to you. And I think, Kathy, we even have this as a poll. And you can just guess. Remember, you're not being marked on it. But I want you to sort of put yourselves in the shoe. People are already jumping into it. Put yourselves in the shoes of the driver, the pedestrian, and try to imagine this happening.
Okay, we'll just give everyone 10 more seconds to get your answer in. If you're not sure, have a guess. Oh, Ken, you're back and you're moving. That's exciting. Okay, there's 2 locations that are basically in equal position, so we need at least one more person to vote to maybe move them one way or the other. Thank you. All right, I'm going to close that one off now.
One more person did vote, but they voted for something else completely. So
no, I know. Oh well, you don't always get.
All right. Well done, everybody, for having a go and starting to really sort of interrogate this and think about it. So we had most votes for location 1 and location 2, and then a couple of people for 3 and 4. Okay, that's interesting. So what I do as an auditor, whether it's a plan or whether it's an existing bit of road, as I said before, is I sort of put myself in the shoes of all these road users and imagine it. So I imagine myself as a driver. I go, okay, I'm driving straight through. What am I going to see? Okay, now I want to turn into here. What am I going to see? Am I going to have sight lines blocked? What am I seeing? I'm turning here, I'm crossing here, and the like. So, we gave you only a very short time to have a little think about that. If you really thought about it and went through each of those scenarios in your mind, I think you would have refined it a little bit further, and you would have discovered that, yeah, 1 and 2 both have some uniqueness to them. 3, 4, and 5 are all potential scenarios, and I'm definitely saying they're not without risk, right? I mean, we've talked about slip lanes and their challenges, so there's certainly risk there, and both of those. Turning in like this, and we might have sight lines blocked by vehicles, parking, so you might not see, so there's some risk there. This one's an odd setup, number one, where you're turning directly into a slip lane. Usually you'd come out and you'd have to go back in, and usually it would be cut off, so there's some risk there as well. But the actual answer is number 2. So those who said 2, well done. But the question is why? What is so odd about this, and why is it so? Well, have a look at the other crossing facilities on the 2 legs that also have slip lanes. Okay? You cross there from the island, and you're on the island, you cross there. This one, for some reason, instead of going to the island out there, crossing there, you cross straight there. Okay? That little decision that somebody made has cost 4 people their health and pretty much their life, really. I mean, yes, they're still alive, but they have some pretty serious lifelong debilitating injuries. So we've got to be able to predict these things from lines on a plan. And the reason for this one is particularly bad is that the reason you go to that point is so that this vehicle is not turning on top of something where they're very much looking the other way. I sort of showed you that when it is back in a normal slip lane. But this one, they are really, they are absolutely focused up this way as a turning driver, and that's not what they're looking at. So yeah, our challenge as auditors is to try and pick the fact that that's going to be a highly severe spot before they ever build. Because coming back and looking at it the way we're looking at it is really a black spot investigation. And we can rectify it, hopefully, from that. So this needs to get extended out, connected to there. Probably close that off would be nice. I think it's a pretty powerful example just to show that design and design choices, which all seem somewhat, reasonable potentially as you're doing them, can have some very serious consequences. And that's what we're here to do, to help, to try and stop that happening. As I mentioned earlier, you've got to get out there and you've got to consider the area during times of lots of activity like this. So if you're auditing a school crossing, really you should be looking at it during school start and end times, see how it operates, see how many kids are using it. If you're looking at the local footy stadium, something, if you can get there during a home game or something like that when it's starting and ending, it's wonderful to see that. Sometimes the practical realities of that are a challenge, so you may not be able to do that. It's nice to look at it when it's raining, when it's sunny, but hey, we understand you sometimes can't. But these sorts of ones where it's a school crossing, you really should be looking at it during school time. And when you're coming up with recommendations and treatments, it's nice to know there's quite a few different pedestrian crossing facilities out there. There's the Puffin crossing, the pedestrian user-friendly intelligent crossing. So that's basically, when you walk up to your house at night and the light comes on, It's the same technology. It's just put into the pedestrian crossing signals. And so if there's movement on the crossing, it holds the light red. Now, somebody at some point in the pedestrian infrastructure crossing game decided to go with a bird theme, and then everybody stuck to it from there. So puffin crossing, so that's the puffin. There's the puffin crossing, the pedestrian user-friendly intelligent crossing device. Toucan crossing. So this is two can cross, pedestrians and cyclists. So that's where you're making it, designing it for that. I'm not making this up. That is actually called a toucan crossing for that reason, and sticking with the bird theme. There's a pelican crossing. And so that's a pedestrian light controlled crossing. So as a driver, you would see a red light, then you see a flashing orange. And that's to sort of give you that warning of, oh, there could be, people straggling or the like, so be really aware, and then it goes to green. There's quite a few of those around the country. So that's a pelican crossing. This is a UK sign, and it sort of made like world's most obscure, funny signs. Humped pelican crossing. I know exactly what they're saying, but obviously the rest of the public aren't so attuned to that. There are Pegasus crossings. There are lots of Pegasus crossings out there. So that's a crossing specifically for a horse, because horse is classified as a vehicle in most jurisdictions' road rules, and so you need to sort of have a specific crossing for a horse, and also up higher for the press button. Some random traffic engineering knowledge here. Did you know that it is illegal to ride a horse when you're intoxicated, because it's classified as drink driving? But it is actually legal to ride an intoxicated horse. Anyway, I need my feedback laughter. I got to get a laugh clip on that one. Okay, anyway, I carry on. Now, some of you are probably a bit concerned at this stage and going, oh my God, Ken just gave us an example where 4 people have had lifelong changing, debilitating injuries as a result of a specific design decision. What if I audit and I miss something like that? This is serious stuff. These people's lives we're talking about. Well, the first thing I'll say is, don't worry, you graduate into this. You're part of a team when you start, and you're going to have people who are very experienced at this. But there's also something I haven't told you, is that the Austroads Guide to Road Safety has these things called checklists. Now, we're actually changing the name of them in the next update to prompt lists. But what they do is they go through heaps of questions that they ask you, which guide your thinking and prompt you to think about different aspects. And so you will get guided through all of this thinking when you're doing audits. So you're not completely out there on your own. The reason we're calling them prompt lists is because they're not a checklist. If you go in through every one of these things, you will get some good guidance, you'll get some good prompts, but you're not going to cover off everything. Right? But they do a really good starting point and help you on your journey. So when you go to do your road safety audit as part of this course, you're going to use the checklist. You're going to go through the checklist, it's going to prompt your thinking, and you're going to go, oh, I didn't actually think about lighting. That's a good point. I wonder how the lighting is. Or drainage. Yeah, I wonder, okay, I haven't thought about drainage. I wonder how that's going to work. Or pedestrian desire lines. Good question. So you will get guided through all of this. And pedestrians there's a whole section on it. And so we'll provide you with copies of that. You don't actually hand your checklist in as part of an audit report, because it's just a prompt list, a guide list, but it's certainly there. Let's do a final quiz, and then we'll take some questions, and then we'll go through the anything else that we want to cover. So we have another quiz there, Kathy.
We sure do, Ken, and I've just popped that one up on the screen there. And we did include just a little hard copy of one of the checklists. I think it's the design stage checklist. So in people's packs, yes. So you're surprised. So that's to help people when they get out to do their site visit. Not next week, probably the week after, but we'll run through that shortly as well. So which of the following is not one of the 3 infrastructure strategies for pedestrian safety? Is it prevention, segregation, separation, or integration? Just got a few more people to...
You have to think all the way back to the start of the pedestrian bit.
Mm-hmm. I've got a question as well, Ken. When is the release for that update? That's $1 million question, isn't it?
Anybody who's ever been involved in an Austroads project will know that, yes, absolutely. It's who knows? So there's been one draft produced and has gone to the jurisdictions. There's been a second draft produced, it's gone to the jurisdictions. We have all the comments back with the project team on this one, and there's just, as per usual, the jurisdictions fighting over some specific topics. So one jurisdiction wants to go one way, one wants to go another, and you're trying to get Austroads to align. So we've got to nut through a couple of those, but I would, be hoping in the next 3 to 6 months. But as I said at the start, you picked a good course to do your road safety audit course, because the content that we're doing is actually driving a lot of the changes in the Austroads guide. And so everything you're covering here is going to be really as per the best practice. There's only going to be a couple of little minor tweaks, and you can log into the Austroads webinar and you'll be updated on that. We'll send around links when that comes out. Which of the following is not one of the 3 infrastructure strategies for pedestrian safety? Prevention, correct. Integration is one of them. That's where you try and make a shared zone. But prevention, not really a specific strategy. We don't want to prevent pedestrian. I think most people want to encourage pedestrian activity in a lot of areas. Get people active. Okay, so open this up now to questions. And I'll give you an opportunity to put your hand up even and ask questions, either about your research topic or about your anything to do with the road safety audit process. Or otherwise, we will be giving you a little bit of time to do your quiz and do your assignment work before the end of the session. Any questions? Any comments? Anybody want to put their hand up? Okay, Kathy, show everybody where the stuff is.
Thank you, Ken. I was just going to show people. So got the recording up there and the quiz from module 1. Recording 2 will come in here, and you've got your module 2 quiz. So this one's nice and easy, only maybe 10 questions or so. But I did just want to alert everyone to module 5, which is when you're going to be completing your road safety audit site visit. In this folder here, there's a few things. One of them is the report template. So that's our template that I think you showed last session, Ken. And so that's the one that you'll be completing. And I believe we've got the sections highlighted there for you. In here, we've also got the different locations, so the sites that we've assigned you, and there's your name at the end of it. So there are a few that are doubled up because your colleagues might live near you or that sort of thing. So what I'd like you to do is have a look at your site where we've sent you. We've tried to make it anywhere sort of from a 5-minute to a 15-minute drive maximum. But if you've happened to move far away from there, or that was your work address, or something, you know, hasn't gone quite right there, if you can get in touch and let me know, and we'll find you another site closer to you. So Ken, you'll go through this in greater detail, not next session, but the one after, but I'm just flagging it with anyone just in case we need to change your site.
Yeah, after next session, we're just going to start out by some really sort of easy starting out in writing up audit findings on desktop design, you know, a review of a design, and then we'll graduate up to the big one there that you've explained. Having got to comment in there just about how to present the research topic. So people finding some information but struggling on ideas for how to present it. Well, I mean, I suppose there's very sort of simple ways. You know, you pop a PowerPoint together with a few key bits of information, some pictures and diagrams that you snip from things, and that would very much suffice. That would get you through. If you're aiming at the prize for most creative or most engaging, maybe you need a little bit more. So in the past, we've seen people do little videos. So they've sort of done selfie videos talking about the topic, maybe walking along and pointing at one of them. We had people build Lego roads and talk about their issue, video that. We've had podcasts, we had people draw cartoons, we had, what else do we have, Kathy?
We haven't had interpretive dance yet, or a TikTok video, which I've been pushing for because I think that's what the young people are doing. But you don't have to do that. No, the Lego, we've had a few Lego ones actually, where people have built, there was the Danish offset crossing that was, and there was an actual pastry Danish that they drove through the Danish offset crossing built by Lego. So that was a highlight.
They won a prize.
Yes. Look, ideally we do ask you to get it in tomorrow, because then it gets off your plate for the weekend. But understand if you can't, and you don't have to go to that you know, that Lego building level unless you've got young children. You can coerce into it, perhaps. So yes, and you won't lose points if you ask for an extension.
No, you won't, and I should say you won't. You know, if you're putting something together on a PowerPoint or a fact sheet or something like that, poster or the like, and it's sort of got the right information and it's all correct and it links it back to a road safety thing, you won't be losing points for lack of creativity or anything like that. But it's just about who gets the prize there. Yeah. So don't worry. You know, we're the engineers sometimes struggle to think of these very broad out of the box ideas, but sometimes we're quite amazed. So we look forward to seeing whatever comes in.
Absolutely.
All right, I think we're pretty good.
No, you don't need to email for an extension. You're all good. I'll make a note.
All right. Any final questions or comments?
No, look, maybe we'll finish up a little bit early.
Yep. So I think it's a good option.
Yeah, people can finish their quizzes, module 1. I think everyone's done module 1 and module 2, and then maybe even have a few minutes to have a think about. A couple more questions have just come in.
Okay, so John was involved in the design of his site. We'll have a think about that, John.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Anything else? Sorry,
that's all right. It sounds like a lot of people would like an extension to Monday afternoon. So I might just do that all round. If you can get it in tomorrow, that'll be great. But if not, yeah, let's make it Monday afternoon. Yep, I think we're good. And I think I'll just get in touch with some people offline who've had some further questions.
Lisa's just asking about topic there in the Q&A, so I'm not quite sure I fully follow that. I might send you an email. All right. Yep. Thanks, everybody. Right. Jump in, do your quiz, get onto your assignment, use your extra 10 minutes that you've gained here wisely, and have a wonderful weekend. We look forward to seeing you next week for our next module. You're going to hear from Tony Bull and Jamie Robinson. You're going to hear a bit about road design, construction site traffic management, road safety audits, and a little bit more from me. So thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Bye.